Hey guys, Berger here with MVP Paintball. Thanks for joining us on this week's Tech Tuesday. So this week, we're going to go over how to clean an older marker. Spyder's been in the industry for quite a while. They require some routine maintenance, maybe after you've played a couple of cases of paint through it, or if it gets muddy, or if you break some paint in there. So what we're going to do is we're going to go over how to take apart an older marker. They're still in use today. This one's probably, I don't know, probably 12 years old. Really good shape. They hold up really well. So we're going to make sure that we don't have an air tank attached to it. Make sure that it's degassed. Sometimes these guns will hold a charge in it, and you really don't want to work on it if it still has some air in there. I've already done that off of camera. So what I'm going to do is we're going to take out this little pin. We're going to remove this pin right here, and this is going to hold the entire back portion of this in. So you always want to have your finger right here. It is held up with spring tension. So I'm going to pop that out. This is going to slide out. When you take it apart, you just want to kind of keep the parts separate so you don't lose anything. It helps you keep track of what's going on. I'm going to pull the bolt out. Inside of here is going to be a little bumper. That's going to come out as I pull this out. You want to try not to lose that. So just gently pull that out. That's the bumper I was referring to. Pull the rest of this out. Your striker back here, it's held in by a pin that's attached to the bolt. So if you pull the bolt out, this will fall out, so it's a good idea to just hold on to it as it comes out. Pull that out. Then you have the bolt all the way out. Just give it a check, make sure that there's nothing down the breech. So before I oil up any of the parts, I always like to clean off any of the old grease, any paint residue, anything like that. Just gives an opportunity to start fresh on it, basically. It's a good time to inspect your O-rings as well. Make sure that there's no nicks in them. Make sure that they're not swollen, they're not brittle. That can happen with age. So as I'm sitting here, I just look over each O-ring. Just give it a quick once over. Same thing on the striker. Now on the bolt, there's two O-rings back here above the air hole, or on the sides of the air hole, sorry. And sometimes there's one on the tip of it. You can get away with not having it on there. It's not a big deal. A lot of times people will pull that off just to drop the operating pressure, a little bit less friction. So most of the time people pull those off. So there's all the internal parts. What I like to do is just take some oil, just put a drop on each O-ring. And then just a little bit on any of the metal that's going to be metal on metal contact. Just a little bit more on that one. Just give it a nice little rub in. Now you don't want too much oil on here. If you have too much oil on there, it's just going to get gummed up quicker. Creates more resistance, which creates some drag, which can create issues down the line. So I'm going to start by putting the bolt back in part of the way. I'm going to attach the striker to it, right on that pin. It's going to slide in with it. And sometimes you just got to line it up a little bit. The reason I told you earlier that you want to make sure that there's no air in here still is because as I'm putting this in, you have to pull the trigger, which is going to release the sear, and it's going to go forward. You have to do it a couple of times. That's normal. If you do it again, it's going to hit the valve, and if you have air in here, sometimes it'll fire. So it's just better to have no air in there at all. This little bumper right here, a lot of times people will make the mistake and put that in first in front of the striker, and then when they go to shoot the gun, it's just going to do like a plump and nothing's going to come out. That's because the striker ends up in between, the bumper ends up in between the striker and the valve, and it just doesn't hit the valve hard enough. So this always goes in after the striker goes in. Just slide it in there. You have your spring. This is actually what controls the velocity of the marker. And this is just a spring guide. It's to make it so when it goes back, it doesn't all crinkle up. So you just put that in there. This little disc right here is to protect the spring guide from the velocity adjuster that's in there. And it feels like that. There we go. So the easiest way to do this is slide that inside. You know, line it up. There's a little piece right here, a little cutout for here. So you just line that up, push it in gently. You're going to take your pin, slide it through. You're going to take your locking pin. There's a little hole in there, so you got to kind of turn it so it lines up properly. You're going to slide this in, and that's going to lock it in place. Before you air it up, you just want to kind of pull that back. You're going to pull the trigger, make sure that everything cycles properly. So since we're taking everything apart, it's also a good time to take a look at your ball detent. That's just below your feed neck, right in front of the breech. This one is held in place by a Phillips head screw. So we're going to unscrew that, take it out. It's a little ball bearing right here. There's a spring behind it, held in with some plastic so it doesn't just pop out. So what you want to do is just give it a gentle push, make sure it moves freely. If it's not, you can always throw some WD-40 in there or something, kind of get some of the gunk out of there. You know, if you break a paintball, the paint goes in there. If you're playing out in the mud or something, mud gets behind there. So it's just a good idea to make sure that that's moving freely. This one's fine, so I'm going to place it back in. Screw the screw in. When you're screwing this down, you don't need to over tighten it. A lot of times people will really jam it in there. It's going to damage the threads on the body, and you don't want to do that. It's also a good time to check all the screws and Allen screws in your gun. Just make sure that they're snug. Again, not too tight. When you're firing, sometimes they'll just back out on you a little bit. So just make sure that they're snug. This is the ASA. It's what holds the air tank. So we just want to make sure that those are nice and tight. And that is how you clean your bolt and do some preventative maintenance on your Spyder Aggressor. Thanks a lot, guys. As always, we ask that you hit that like button, subscribe to our channel, leave us a comment, let us know what you want to see next, and don't forget to hit that notification bell. Thanks. Hey guys, Berger here with MVP